The Nintendo Switch is a hefty library of side-scrolling and retro-inspired games that, in my opinion, benefit more from a D-pad rather than an analog stick. The Switch's D-pad situation right out of the box isn't ideal. The traditional cross-style D-pad was sacrificed in order for the Joy-Cons to be symmetrical for single-controller multiplayer gameplay. I think it's a worthy revision for the sake of the Switch having such a unique feature, but as someone that's always preferred a D-pad over an analog stick, the single-button arrow keys aren't the greatest, they're serviceable at best. I took it upon myself to get a dedicated D-pad controller. This hoary wired controller that I bought right after getting my Switch has the same individual D-pad button thing going on. However, it comes with this little plastic piece you place over the buttons to turn it into a sort of rolling Sega-style D-pad. This is much better than what the Joy-Cons give you. It's far more comfortable in the hand, and I could especially see it being favored by people that play a lot of fighting games. It's a really great controller overall. Very good if you're looking for a traditional-style Switch controller on the cheap. Accounting for my own personal taste, though, it's still not quite the best for a simple controlling game like Super Meat Boy. This D-pad style isn't my favorite, and I've never really liked having my thumbs asymmetrical to each other either. Now, I've always been a huge fan of the SNES controller, it's probably my favorite. The dog-bone-shaped mold fits perfectly into your hands, and the fingers and thumbs all line up exactly where you want them to be. I love how the X and Y buttons have a concave shape to them. The tip of your thumb fits snugly into both of these buttons and allow you to use the rest of your thumb to push the adjacent diagonal button. The D-pad feels terrific. All of these old Nintendo D-pads do, really. Even the wonky Nintendo 64 controller had a good D-pad, and only 3 games use that thing. I really think that the Super NES gamepad got everything right. Its 6-button configuration was a perfect 10 in this 16-bit age, and I've been saying for years that I wish I could still be using this thing for all my games today. Naturally, in this day and age, you can do just such that thing. This is the SN30 Pro gamepad from 8BitDo. 8BitDo? 8BitDo? It is a fully fledged modern Pro controller modeled after the Super Nintendo, adding 2 symmetrical analog control sticks, a second set of shoulder buttons, rumble, and even motion control. It connects via Bluetooth to your Nintendo Switch, PC, smart device, and macOS as well. I'll cut right to it, this is a great controller, but it's not without its hiccups. It really just feels like a modern Super Nintendo controller. Naturally, it isn't a one-to-one recreation. The buttons and D-pad are positioned a hair higher on the controller itself to fit ergonomically with the control sticks, which feel fantastic. What surprised me so much about this controller is how high quality these control sticks feel. They're certainly not cheap additions to an already established, solid controller design. I also like how the L2 and R2 buttons have this little dip in them that's shaped to your fingertips comfortably, not unlike the concave X and Y buttons. In action, this controller feels great. The buttons are every bit as clicky and responsive as you'd like them to be. The D-pad is a firm press but has enough wiggle room so lining up a perfect jump in a challenging platformer like Celeste is no problem at all. As I said earlier, the control sticks feel terrific. Perfectly great control sticks that feel very in tune with the analog sticks on the DualShock 4. I initially thought that I wouldn't want to be using these sticks for longer than otherwise necessary, but twitchy precise games like Doom or Enter the Gungeon didn't really give me any issue at all for hours on end. Your mileage may vary, however. I know some people really don't like not having handles for the rest of their hands. For me, it's no problem. Now, I mentioned earlier that the SN30 Pro isn't just some simple novelty controller. The thing really wants to be your primary gaming controller, and it tries to sweeten the pot with modern features such as motion control and rumble. The motion control works surprisingly well. The tilt control in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is responsive and tight, and the gyro aiming in Splatoon 2 feels no worse than tilting the Joy-Con grip. That being said, for as good as the SN30 Pro's motion controls are, if I'm going to be playing a game where motion is my primary input, I'm probably just going to be sticking to the first-party Joy-Cons. The gyro guts in these things work so darn well that it ultimately makes more sense to use them primarily. And I mean, come on, have you played Splatoon 2 with relaxed Joy-Con aiming? This is the new standard for console shooters for me. The quality of the controller's motion control is definitely a pleasant surprise, but I unfortunately can't say the same thing about the SN30 Pro's rumble feature. Now, it's not that it doesn't work well, it's just that, well, here, let me show you. The rumble of the SN30 Pro is far too strong in every instance that I've used it. This is just ordinary rumble, none of that fancy HD rumble stuff that the Joy-Cons and official Pro controller have inside of them. It looks like when a game tries to send out the signals that are supposed to trigger the fine intricacies of HD rumble, the standard rumble obviously doesn't pick up on that, it just fires off full blast. Going back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that game is firing off rumble signals left and right. Acceleration, drifting, coin collecting, boosting, they all have unique vibration patterns to them. The HD rumble for these actions feel fantastic in my Joy-Cons, but for the SN30 Pro, it's just... The vibrations coming from the controller while playing ended up being too much for me. Between the constant buzzing and the eventual soreness in my hand from such strong vibrations, I ultimately decided that a game like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was unplayable with the SN30 Pro. At least, until you turn off controller vibrations in the system settings. However, this goes for all controllers connected to the systems, not individual ones. I ran into similar situations with Super Mario Odyssey, and it's kinda got me worried that all forthcoming Nintendo titles with HD Rumble aren't gonna be the most compatible when it comes to the specific controller. Ultimately, I wish that 8BitDo had chose to forgo including motion control and rumble in the SN30 Pro to ease up on price, but I'll still be damned if I say that this isn't an excellent games controller. The device is a real labor of love, from the button shapes and colors to the unique new moldings to fit control sticks and added buttons. It will make a fine addition to your Switch controller collection, and I've definitely made it my prime controller for couch-based TV play. And for the cherry on top of it all, you can use an official 8BitDo retro receiver to use the SN30 Pro on original SNES hardware. I haven't gotten one myself, so I can't show you, but I feel like it's still worth letting you know. The SN30 Pro is a fantastic controller that I can wholeheartedly recommend to Switch owners and SNES enthusiasts alike.